All right, we are now looking at the exact same graph from number 10, and we are asking, we're asked to find 4 more features of this graph. So the first thing is the domain. Now, when we talked about domain in the notes, a lot of times we would just talk about the domain of one cycle. But because we can see that this graph goes on forever and ever in both directions, and the main reason I'm saying that is because if you look at the very left side, there's an arrow indicating that it goes on to the left, and then here there's an arrow indicating this goes on to the right. So that means this graph is going on forever and ever, meaning that the domain would be all real numbers. The range of this graph is talking about how high and low it goes. So if you look here, the highest point it gets is 3, and the lowest point that it ever gets is -3. So my range would be between -3 and +3. And I'm using square brackets because there are actually points here at those y values, so they are included in the range. This part C asks us for the y-intercept. There is one y-intercept. This is your y-axis, your vertical axis. The only time this graph crosses the y-axis is right here at 0, 0. So that would be your y-intercept. And then we already talked about part D on the previous slide, so I'll write it in again. Your midline is at y equals 0. Now, if you had a little bit of trouble looking at that and just seeing that it's at y equals 0, we do have a formula for that also. So if you need a refresher, the midline formula is if you take your top y value plus your bottom y value. So it's almost the same as the amplitude one. For amplitude you subtract, and for midline you add. So my top y value is 3 plus my bottom y value, which is -3. If you do 3 plus -3, that gives you 0, and 0 divided by 2 is still 0. So either way, if you have to use the formula or if you can just look at it, either way you should get y equals 0. And please remember that it specifically asks you for the equation of the midline, so it has to say y equals.